Hello, friends! Welcome to the 7th episode of the Schoolyard podcast, brought to you by School Specialty. Today, we'll be talking about adaptive art for all students. I'm your host, Nancy Chung, a fun-loving teacher and content creator, also known as Fancy Nancy in 5th on social media, and I'm thrilled that you're here. A special shout out to School Specialty, who offers essential educational supplies and complete learning environment solutions to help you transform more than classrooms. This is the Schoolyard Podcast, a podcast by educators for educators where the magic of learning unfolds. Adaptive art is all about creating art that can be enjoyed and appreciated by everyone, regardless of their abilities or limitations. It's about making art more inclusive and accessible to a wider range of people. This could involve using different materials or techniques that cater to different sensory needs, or creating art installations that can be experienced in different ways. Adaptive art is important because it allows individuals with disabilities or special needs to engage with and express themselves through art. It promotes inclusivity and breaks down barriers, allowing everyone to participate in the creative process. By making art more accessible, it also helps to challenge societal norms and stereotypes surrounding disability, showcasing the unique talents and perspectives of individuals who may have been marginalized in the past. Adaptive art encourages creativity, self-expression, and personal growth, fostering a sense of belonging and empowerment for all. Today, we have a very special guest who has worked over 30 years as an adaptive art specialist and art therapist. She's an expert on adaptive art. Welcome to the show, Sue Loesl.
Hi.
Would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe when and how you got into art therapy?
Okay. I'm an adaptive art specialist, art therapist, and I worked for Milwaukee Public Schools for 30 years. And my role was to work with art teachers and special ed teachers with kids with disabilities in the arts to help them access their art making skills so that they could more independently do art. I found out about art therapy when I was a junior in high school, actually, and my mom was watching the Today program. And a gal named Helen Langgarten came on, and she was talking about a relatively new profession called art therapy. Mm-hmm. And I came out and I watched it and I got all excited and I went to school and talked to my guidance counselor. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, let's check it out. So we found a couple of schools that were in Wisconsin and Minnesota that offered art therapy. And I ended up enrolling at Mount Mary College, now university. Mm-hmm. And I did my undergraduate work in art therapy. And I wanted to work with children in psychology. And my advisor at Mount Mary had said, well, you're going to need to have a teaching license to work with kids in Wisconsin. So I double majored in art therapy and art ed, and then graduated in 1983 and went to work in nursing homes for a while because I couldn't get a job as an art teacher because they didn't want to have an art therapist art therapizing the students. Mm-hmm. So I worked there in a residential treatment center for 4 years in Milwaukee. And then Milwaukee Public Schools got a grant from the Department of Public Instruction to hire 8 music therapists and 6 art therapists to work with teachers. And so I was hired, and my role was to go traveling to the different schools and work with art teachers and special ed teachers to help them devise strategies to help their students access adaptive art. Oh, and then amazing. I retired in 2019 from Milwaukee Public Schools. And then we moved to where I now live in north central Wisconsin, in a little town called Pella, which is kind of between Green Bay and Wausau.
Oh, I see. Today, when you were working in the nursing homes, did you do any art with them?
Oh, I was hired as an art therapist to do art with them.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
So from working with occupational therapists and physical therapists, I started developing my skills to work with persons with disabilities who couldn't hold on to art tools or who couldn't use the weaving loom beater to work on their weaving projects. And and they're sitting in wheelchairs and they couldn't get up to tables. So we had to adapt it by having different kinds of tabletop easels
Mm-hmm.
and things. So I kind of started with that. And then when I
Okay.
went to the residential treatment center,
Uh-huh.
we were working with girls that had more social emotional challenges. And so I
Mm-hmm.
developed adaptive tools and strategies for that population in
Mm-hmm.
my work there.
Now, for the listeners who are wondering what the exact definition of adaptive art or adapted art is, can you please explain to us what that is?
Well, I like to think of adaptive art as being um, how to consider accessing art making as independently as possible by providing alternative art materials, such as like adapted scissors or adapted paintbrushes for like either for
Mm-hmm.
hand grips or for sensory issues,
Mm-hmm.
adapting different kinds of techniques, like when for doing linoleum cuttings, instead of using the traditional tools that you push
Mm-hmm.
the cutting tool into it, they have tools that you pull it, and it's a lot safer. So that it's adapting a technique,
Mm-hmm.
and then adapting the art materials. Sometimes I had kids that were eating my art supplies,
Oh,
and
wow.
so what I needed to do, especially like for clays and things, so then
Mm-hmm.
we would adapt it and maybe use a salt, flour, and water dough
Right.
instead of using
Mm-hmm.
traditional clay. Not that
Edible
you
clay.
wanted to eat materials, but at
But
least it
something
was a
safe.
little bit safer.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Now, I think I know the answer to this next question, but what are some benefits of adaptive art and who benefits?
Benefits of the adaptive art, strategies are that, the students that have, challenges, either physical challenges or sensory issues, or even, emotional and social challenges and stuff, don't always utilize the art tools or the art making tools in the same way as other students do. And so if you've got a tool that a student can hold on to, because maybe their fine motor skills don't work as well, as the other um, as its other students, or they can't hold on to a traditional scissors
Mm-hmm.
and things, that they can now be more independent because the tools are making a difference in how their challenges have affected how they've approached art making and stuff before.
Mm-hmm.
Because so oftentimes what'll happen is that the student can't cut, well, then somebody will always cut the materials out for the students and they
For
don't
them.
get that experience.
Right. What are some challenges when it comes to incorporating adaptive art into a school? And what can we do to get past those challenges?
Well, some of the challenges in a school are that a lot of the art teachers aren't trained to work with kids with challenges, either in
True.
their
Mm-hmm.
pre-service coursework and things. They've maybe had an adaptive art workshop in one of the classes. Um, Maybe their student teaching opportunities. They didn't have many opportunities to work with kids with disabilities. And when we're writing lesson plans, many times there aren't a lot of resources. There weren't a lot of resources available to help figure out how to, adapt for that. So they're not trained on other things. And sometimes the classes are inclusive. We have kids that have challenges,
Mm-hmm.
in art making, in with, other typical students who don't have the challenges. So you might be creating 3 or 4 different levels
Mm-hmm.
of experiences in that same class. And it can be really overwhelming for some art teachers who have 7 to 9 classes a day
Mm-hmm.
and are doing potentially 3 to 4 different kinds of activities within the same activity.
Right.
Sometimes there's not enough support
Mm-hmm.
for, staff support to come in and, help the art teacher,
Right. I
do
see
their,
that. Mm-hmm.
mhm.
Or even like funding for the special equipment or special, resources, right? Um,
Yes, funding can really be an issue because a lot of the adaptive tools are expensive. And if you're only
right.
doing them for a couple of, it's the perception you're only doing it for a couple of students, it's too expensive. But if we include the art materials and stuff
Mm-hmm.
for all the students,
Mm-hmm.
then it tends to be more a better budgetary focus.
Right. How do you adjust art classrooms and projects so that it's fitting for all students within a wide range of abilities. Now, when you were talking about like maybe possibly like doing 3 different types of like differentiated activities, I was imagining
Mhm.
my class, my 5th graders, and we have some students who get done in like 5 minutes. And they're like, what do I do now? I'm done. And then we have kids who are just barely getting started and they have no idea like how to get started because they have this fear of like I'm not good at art. Like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get started. So you have this wide range of students with different abilities. So how can we adjust
Mhm.
our classrooms and projects so that it is fitting for all students?
I think one of the first things we can do is that with adaptive tools and things, to have them available for all the students. So sometimes what happens is that if you've got these like cool tools, they've got different kinds of scissors or paintbrushes with some fun grips on them, or the slant boards to help raise up the surface for students. Some of the stuff doesn't get integrated unless all the students kind of buy into it. So have it available for everybody, can kind of
Mm-hmm.
help make that those kinds of materials more inclusive for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned like the student that maybe works kind of quickly. An art
Mm-hmm.
teacher might have an ongoing project. They might have like a weaving project in the classroom. If a student
Mm-hmm.
needs some downtime, they can go
Mm-hmm.
over and take a personal 5-minute break and work on that project. Or
Mm-hmm.
I also will think of that if you have a place in the art room where you'll have some paper and maybe some fun materials
Mm-hmm.
that the students could go and take like either take a break or go over and maybe it's a sensory area or something
Mm-hmm.
that they can independently go over there and create a little picture, tear up the paper, do what they need to do for those couple minutes, and
Mm-hmm.
then come back and get refocused and re-regulated back onto the activity.
Mm-hmm. I love that, the independent creativity project. Um, so they're not only just working on the project that they are assigned, but they're thinking outside the box and having to really create their own. And I also think it's really great that you're letting everyone have access to these tools because it doesn't single out any students with special needs. It prevents them from feeling less othered. So when you like, and then I'm sure
Yeah.
the rest of the class, like if they see cool scissors, like they want to try it, they want to use it, and you don't want to say like, no,
Right.
that's only for this student. So, I like that, like you
Mhm.
mentioned over and over again, like the whole inclusivity part of that. Okay, so I don't know if you know this about me, but my background is in art education. So, of course, the art loving me wants art for everyone, and of course, adaptive art everywhere. The question is, how can we bring this into more classrooms?
Well, I think part of it is, definitely bringing in adaptive tools, so that the students
Mm-hmm.
can access their whatever they're wanting to make because the tools are working for them.
Mm-hmm.
So um, if you were to have, grips on your pencils, or you would have, other kinds of maybe scented markers or things that, are kind of kind of push the creativity, of a bit with your students so that they would, again, all be able to, create as independently, as possible. When
Mm-hmm.
you've got, when you're adapting, techniques, or you're adapting, the media and stuff, I think all the kids in the classroom would, get into all the different kinds of things you're doing for your students that are identified as requiring or needing special ed tools and
Mm-hmm.
adapted tools and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of resources and stuff, online. If you Google adaptive tools or adaptive art, there
Mm-hmm.
are some a number of our activities and stuff that are listed on there that other teachers are utilizing and having
Mm-hmm.
success with, and
Mm-hmm.
networking with other teachers, certainly
Mm-hmm.
can be a
Mm-hmm.
way to, especially in your district
Share
and
ideas.
beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sharing ideas.
Yeah, share ideas or resources. That was going to be my next question is if you're looking for resources out there, I'm sure listeners, if they don't have the specific training for adaptive art, but they want some resources out there, like where can they go? Are there like I'm sure there are Facebook groups and different groups of adaptive art teachers who are sharing lesson
Yes.
ideas. Maybe I'm sure there are a lot of like YouTube videos, like, specially
Right.
designed for this. Do you have any like
Mhm.
specific resources or where people can go to access those?
Um, Well, one of my favorite books as a
Mm-hmm.
resource is called The Special Artist Handbook, and it's by Susan Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a book that takes different art projects, and in each of the projects, she divides it down as to how she would adapt it for each of the different challenges that students might be presenting in class. So she'll
Oh,
take
wow.
a project such as like drawing a guitar, and so how would
Mm-hmm.
a child that has sensory issues or is gifted and talented or
Mm-hmm.
dealing with autism or physical challenges, so visual impairments, hearing impairments. And it really became my Bible as I
Oh.
was working with kids and stuff, about just thinking how I can take a drawing activity and adapt it. How can I take a
Mm-hmm.
painting
Would you mind
activity, and
telling us
for
the
all the
title one more
different kinds
time?
of disabilities
Mm.
that the students might present. Sure. It's called The Special Artists Handbook
Okay.
by Susan Rodriguez.
Okay, perfect.
Some other organizations, like the National Art Education Association, of which many art teachers might be a member of, there's a group that's called that's ASE, are
Mm-hmm.
the initials, and it stands for Art and Special Education. It's a special interest networking group, and they have a Facebook page. And teachers are always putting up questions and ideas about specific either art projects or about specific student challenges. And I've been a part of that, and they would ask, well, I have a student that has this challenge and I'm wanting to do this project. What suggestions do you have? And so
That's
that's a
great.
good one. Another one is
Mm-hmm.
through the Council for Exceptional Children. There's a special interest group for arts folks, and it's called DARTS. And it's a division of visual and performing arts education. And again, there's a Facebook thing, but that's including all the different arts. So art and
Mm-hmm.
music and performing arts and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And the perspectives are just very, very refreshing. And that people just love sharing their ideas with each other.
Yeah, I would love to get a list of these resources that you mentioned and maybe put it in our blog description so our listeners can log on and see and access those things too. So thank you so much for sharing those. Now, this might be a very broad of a question. What have you learned? Like in your experience of over 30 years, what is your biggest takeaway or what is something that you really learned while working in adaptive art and art therapy?
The biggest thing I've learned is that there's an artist in all of my students, and that as
Mm-hmm.
long as they can, access and engage with the art materials, they can do anything. And oftentimes it's about listening and watching and offering strategies to the students and seeing how they interact with them that drives me to come up with more ideas and stuff to help them be as successful as they want to be. So it's about listening to the students. I may have my ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been doing this, like you said, for 30 years, and
Mm-hmm.
I've got usually these kinds of strategies works for this kinds of student.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the ideas in, and then the student will start working with it or doing something. I'll go, oh, okay, this would be so much better. That
Mm-hmm.
I don't have all the answers. And by
Mm-hmm.
working with the student, I
Mm-hmm.
can more easily help them achieve their goals and just kind of be
Mm.
that support person. When I back off a
Oh,
little bit and
uh-huh.
let them lead me.
I love that. And I'm sure each case is very different. Each person, each student is very special, like very special and unique to what their needs are and
Yes.
what brings them, therapy and relaxation and right. Okay, so you have to tell us, what are your three favorite must-have adaptive tools?
Well, I think that to have must-haves for adaptive art, I think that one of the first things you need to have is a adaptive scissors, like some kind of
Mm-hmm.
a loop scissors or another tool, scissors that the student can independently use.
Mm-hmm.
The other things I think you need to consider is being able to grip and hold on to drawing pencils or colored pencils or markers or paintbrushes.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of a home device would be to take a milk carton, cut the handle off of it, and then you can put your crayons or your markers or any of your tools into the milk carton grip. And
Oh,
then the
uh-huh.
students can utilize that to draw or paint. Now, if perchance the
Uh-huh.
tool doesn't fit in there real good, my
Mm-hmm.
third favorite tool is masking
Mm-hmm.
tape. because
Masking tape,
masking
just
tape,
regular good old masking tape.
good old
Uh-huh.
masking tape.
Mm-hmm.
You can wrap it around the art tool if it doesn't fit real good in your milk grip, and you can put it in there so it sits in there really snug. You can use the masking tape to hold down the papers on the work surface so they're not shifting around for the students. You can even take newspaper and wrap that around your drawing or painting tools and using masking tape to hold it on to build up that grip so the student can draw and paint and do all different kinds of art activities because they can hold onto the tools.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so all of these 3 items, they're not super expensive and they're readily available and ready to use. Well, thank you for sharing those 3
Yes.
items. Okay, so I heard through the grapevine that you have a very impressive adaptive scissor collection. Okay, I can only imagine what kind of art collection you have, but a very special scissor collection. Could you please tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Oh, that's funny. I have over 72 different kinds of adaptive scissors. I've
Wow.
been collecting them forever. And with them, they are different. And sometimes it's about how large the handles are on the scissors, because sometimes some of my kids that had cognitive challenges or developmental disabilities have larger hands, so they need a larger grip on the scissors. Some of the scissors have loops on the back that kind of helps facilitate that open close motion so that they can independently cut. Some of the scissors are super tiny. I was once working with a student that had a very, very tiny little grasp, and I actually got the pair of scissors out of a bubblegum machine. I spent $4.50.
Wow.
I've got quarters to get the little scissors out of the bubblegum machine for one of my students.
And they actually work?
Yes.
Wow, that's wild. That is really cool. I would love to see that. Okay.
Yeah, someday I'll put the whole thing together.
I know. I thought I had a impressive scissor collection, but it's not quite 72. My husband's like, "How many pairs of scissors do you need?" I'm like, "You can never have too many."
Never. And everyone is so unique,
Right.
It could be painted, it could be a different kind of color. It could be how it feels. Each one has its own special adaptive qualities that really have made it special.
I know our listeners can't see what I'm doing, but I just reached over and grabbed these scissors. They're like the ergonomic scissors, one of my favorite. These are like fabric scissors, but they're my favorite.
Yes.
And whenever the kids, my students see them, they're like, "What are those? Can we try that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't hurt your hand when you cut, like thicker paper when you're cutting a lot." So as a teacher, this is great. So here's one example of adaptive scissors.
And they do have those.
Yeah, I bet you do. I bet you do. So let's say you're an art teacher who was just told that you have to teach adaptive art and you have no idea where to start. Help. Besides calling Sue, what could they do? What could they do?
Okay. Well, the first thing is network with the other art teachers in your school district that have worked with students with challenges in the arts, because they just have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and they certainly will take you under their wing to help you. Secondly, take a good conversation time space and talk to your special ed teachers that are working with the students and ask them the students' strengths and challenges. And I know time is of the essence, but maybe shoot them off an email and just say, can you please tell me about the students in your class? What are their strengths and challenges? Considering what we need to do in art. Can they cut? Can they draw? Will they eat the art supplies? How long can they stay on task? Kind of develop that team work in the building. And then the other part is watch the students. How are they accessing the materials? How engaged are they? What can they do? What tasks are they good at? What tasks do they need some more support with? And then keep adjusting until you and the student find the best strategies to help that student in their art making.
Love that. Work together with the student, not just decide for them what's best for them, but decide with them as you experience working together. Okay, we have a segment here on the Schoolyard podcast called Tag Your It. Our listeners write in with a question, and we select one question to answer on the show. Today's question comes to us from our listener, Deborah, and her question is, as a 5th grade teacher, what are your thoughts on the one-on-one classroom and a flipped classroom for upper elementary school? So, okay, so I'm going to answer this part first. As a fifth grade teacher, my class, our school and our district, we have one-on-one devices, which I love. And when we were faced with the pandemic and going 100% into virtual learning, that made everything so much easier, and it made the transition a lot less seamless compared to other districts and other schools that may not have had the one-on-one device. So that was great. But it always made me wonder, for schools and districts that did not have one-on-one devices, how is this equitable, right? And I was just really thinking a lot about how are we handling that issue of the whole equity. Okay. And then on the topic of flipped classroom for upper elementary, from my understanding of flipped classroom, that's when the students are at home and watching lesson videos on like their teacher, or a lot of teachers use Khan Academy. They will, whatever the standard or the topic is, they will have the instructional videos available for the students to watch and learn at home. And when they come into the classroom, they will be working with the teacher to actually solve problems and work out the standards. That's my understanding. I haven't tried it yet, but I know that when we were doing virtual and hybrid learning situations, I was doing a lot of video lessons. I would record myself teaching. So a lot of that was already happening, but I haven't brought it back into our traditional setting yet. But that would be very interesting to try. For you, Sue, for an adaptive, artist, art therapist, and adaptive art expert, can you see adaptive art being done kind of in this flipped classroom model?
Yes, I think that there are so many different kinds of videos, tutorial videos that are online that
Mm-hmm.
show how to do these different, art techniques and things. And so if the students would go and access those, they could see a number of different folks who might be doing a painting, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
project. And what's so cool about it is that it is step by step. The students can slow it down and then
Mm-hmm.
stop it,
Right. Go at
review
their own
it.
pace. Uh-huh.
Yeah, go at their own pace, and
Mm-hmm.
then they're doing it, they could even do it along with at their home and stuff. And then when they
Mm-hmm.
get into the classrooms, they've seen a multiple of different kinds of experiences of how to paint a flower or whatever the thing is. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the students need more than one way of doing something, and they go, oh, now I understand, now I can do it.
Absolutely.
And then the teacher can support them in the classroom with any
Mm-hmm.
adaptations that
Mm-hmm.
might help that be more successful for them.
Great. Thank you. Well, as we just discussed, incorporating more adaptive art in schools not only fosters creativity and self expression, but also provides a platform for students with diverse abilities to thrive and showcase their unique talents. By embracing adaptive art, schools can create an inclusive and enriching environment that celebrates the diversity and potential of all students. Teachers, please utilize your online resources and engage with social media community to access a wide range of adaptive art techniques and ideas. And please, please, please reach out to us if you need any help getting started. Sue, thank you again for being here with us today and teaching us so much about adaptive art. We really enjoyed having you here.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I had a great time.
Thank you for joining us for the 7th episode of the Schoolyard podcast. Remember to pack your curiosity and meet us back in the schoolyard for our next episode. But before you go, tag you're it. Now it's your turn to write in with a question which we will answer here on the Schoolyard podcast for our segment called Tag You're It. Tag us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter at School Specialty and hashtag Schoolyard Tag You're It with a question that you want answered. One question will be selected per episode to be answered by our featured guest and myself. And if your question is chosen to be answered on the podcast, we'll send you a very special Schoolyard Podcast t-shirt. Class dismissed.